Salam, everybody, again. Welcome again as we continue with our Passion of Christ journey through the Gospel of Mark. And last time we left at the second coming, the parousia, and of course, that is the second advent. And we also look at the eschatological events that were mentioned in the book of Mark. Now, we didn't have time to do a commentary on the other two Gospels. And so we continue from where we left. And we are going to look at the Gospel of Luke in chapter 17 and 21. And Luke is written, of course, after the destruction of Jerusalem temple at around 80 AD. And so for him, he has the hindsight, and he writes to encourage Christians. And so to him, it really makes sense that the abomination has already happened, and the Jews have fled Jerusalem. And he doesn't look at the second advent from the Old Testament, because already it has happened. And so for him, the oppression that was currently happening was that of the Gentiles. And him writing to the Gentiles, it only makes sense for him not to mention the Old Testament texts. Mark does, but you will expect Matthew to do even much more, because he was writing to the converted Jews. Now, Luke tells us about the camping in the Mount of Olives by pilgrims, and pilgrims were coming from different countries, so it was an international event, because they were coming for the Passover, and these are the people who I said earlier had converted into Judaism, and so they had to come for this event. And so you remember also the white graves. Already at this time, they were painted white for people not to stumble on the dead and become unclean. And so again, the Mount of Olives, Luke does not use that because it is a Jewish word. He uses the Garden of Gethsemane. So never be confused with the two. Luke does not use most of the Jewish terminologies in his gospel, because he's writing to non-Jews. And so Mark was an in-between guy, and Matthew was outrightly writing to the Jews. Now, Matthew 24, he compares the events of the second coming with the flood of Noah and the second chance that was given to humanity. And he also ignores what Mark had written as a watchful servant. But instead of the watchful servant, Matthew details a lot about the parable of the good and the bad servant. And so with that, we may want to continue to the Bethany saga city. The Bethany city was known to be a city of the friends of Jesus, and especially the family of Lazarus and his two sisters. These are the only people who are mentioned to us by Apostle John. And so he is said to be frequenting Bethany so much when he wanted to, after a long day of mission and ministry. And so for him, he retired to, it's like he wanted to prepare himself, and he needed a conducive environment to prepare himself for what was coming ahead. And like we saw in the Garden of Gethsemane, or in the Mount of Olives, he will pray, and this is where he will be arrested. Now, he anoints the place, is the first thing. He anoints the place, the garden. And according to Mark, these took place 6 days before Passover. And so, and in anointing this place, probably I don't know, probably he could be, he may have focused on his anointing that will actually miss during his burial. Jesus will not be buried, and so he will not be anointed as a dead man. And it is here in Bethany that after anointing the Mount of Olives, he is then anointed in one of the houses of his friends. Now, the lady who anoints him is really not clear whether it was Mary, the sister of Lazarus, or some of his relatives, member of the family. The Gospel of John talks of a woman with demons, but we don't find that in any of the synoptic Gospels. So this woman pays homage to Jesus because it's as if Jesus was already dead at this point, and so he is anointed. And so if you look at the human Jesus, you might be confused. But this is an indication of the end of the work of the Messianic King. Anointing was done to the Messiah and the kings when they wanted to take up their missions. But here we find Jesus being anointed when he is facing death. And so he is also seen as a suffering Messiah, okay, as a suffering Messiah servant. And so it is not really clear the anointing of probably a new mission to be begun or what was ending. That is something that we can continue to discuss probably at the comment section in my YouTube channel. But you can see I'm also struggling in trying to get this through. And so the complaint came from the disciples, according to one of the gospel, but Matthew mentions it is Judas. They complain of the very expensive oil being wasted. But you see, they still don't understand the mission of Jesus and who Jesus is, like we said earlier. And so he condemns them and tells them that they always had the poor and they will continue having the poor among them. So they should be doing the right thing to the poor, like we had mentioned earlier about the widows, the orphans, and the oppressed. And so you see, it repeats itself. And so probably this costed like a penny or a dinar, which was equivalent to probably a day's job pay. And they seem to be looking at this from a wrong angle. And so Luke talks of the anointing happening not in Bethany, but in Capernaum, in the house of a person called Simeon. And I would want to believe this is not the Simeon that we had looked at, who had a banquet, and he was a Pharisee. And so that is it. And so Judas, if going by Matthew, Judas complaining, for me that was the mark of the betrayer. And the betraying started from that point. And so it is very important for us to follow that Judas is almost like a professional betrayer. And so when Judas left, it is when that he later came with the chief priests and the temple guards to arrest Jesus. And so Matthew is quick to say that Judas was entered by a demon or Satan. That's why he behaved the way he behaved. And he talks of the money that he was paid, which is also mentioned in the book of Exodus, chapter 21, which was money paid to slaves, actually, and for the master to exonerate himself from, or herself, from the oppression meted on the slave. And so in releasing the slave, they gave them some money to cushion for their upkeep. And so Matthew looks at this from that perspective. You will also find that the motive of Judas to betray Jesus is not really well established, but it is left for us to probably be revealed or for us to discuss. But it could be very many things. People have said it is greed. Judas, having come from a city or an urban area, knew the importance of money, and he was looking at his life and seeing that this guy is dying, he's not saving Jerusalem or saving the Jews. So he needed the money to go and probably continue with his life. He had already wasted 3 years and he needed to recoup. This is corruption, and this is how these are the decisions that we make when we are paying our way out or paying for a service to a person who is already being paid a salary out of your own tax money. And so he looks at this and he saves himself by betraying his master, but he doesn't hate his master. And so he looks at the master as, if I send him these guys, he's going to also call for the revolution so that we can liberate ourselves. But Jesus doesn't, because he looks at Jesus and he sees, when you fed the 5,000 guys, you were supposed to say these things. You never said. And so when you went to Jerusalem in the triumph entry, you never said anything of this sort, of our liberation. So you guy, you must go, and I'll not be left languishing in poverty. So you are going, and you're going to make me rich. And so he sells his master. And so anyway, Jesus, being a suffering Messiah and a servant, he looks at Judas, and probably he sees all the thoughts Judas had. He also looks at the chief priest and their servants, and he asks them, I'm always around during the day teaching people. Why are you coming to arrest me in front of pilgrims at night? And you see, and among you are my friends. And so Judas may have mentioned a lot of things, including him residing in Bethany, him residing also in Jerusalem at Mark's mother's house, and finally, he probably had gone to all these places before coming to the Mount of Olives or Garden of Gethsemane. And so he may have mentioned that this guy, he said that he will destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. And so they had all the reasons to arrest him because of blasphemy and because of pronouncing himself as the king. Because whoever would have ordered the destruction of the temple was only the king. Now, we will reach at that, and I want to thank all of you who are continuing to support this initiative, and may we continue to pray that this work may be rendered important by many, and it may touch the lives and souls of many, and also that we may be able to do even a better version that will be more consistent and more appealing, with even graphics to make us understand even much better. But this is where we are, this is how we begin, and we are hopeful and praying for all the greatest things that God has planned for us. Peace, and may you continue to hold your faith and never give up. Remember, this is the season for the reason of life. Remember also the oppressed and those who depend on us. Thank you so much.